The evil grandfather. By your name. The old mansion stood at the edge of a desolate forest, its windows darkened like empty eyes. The young siblings, Claire and Michael, arrived at the estate after their parents insisted they spend the summer with their estranged grandfather, a man they barely knew. Their parents' words echoed in Claire's head as they crossed the creaking threshold: his family. He's lonely. It will be good for you both. But something about the house, and the man within it, set her teeth on edge. Grandfather appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his frame unnaturally still. His gaunt face was carved with wrinkles that seemed too deep, his eyes glinting with a sharpness that pierced through the dim light. He wore a faint, chilling smile. "Welcome home," he said in a voice that rasped like dry leaves. Days in the mansion dragged on, heavy with an oppressive quiet. Grandfather's rules were strict. They were never to enter the attic, never to wander the grounds after dark, and never to touch his study. Michael, always curious, began whispering questions to Claire late at night. Why does he keep the study locked? What's in the attic? Claire had no answers, but a shared unease grew between them. One evening, a storm rattled the windows, and the power flickered out. Claire and Michael lit candles and sat huddled in the parlor. Grandfather's footsteps echoed through the halls above, deliberate and heavy. Then came a sound that made their blood run cold, a deep growl that seemed to come from the attic, followed by a heavy thud. "We need to see what's up there," Michael whispered, his voice trembling. Claire hesitated, but the need to understand the eerie house overpowered her fear. They crept up the staircase, their candlelight trembling as much as their hands. The attic door was locked, but Michael produced a small paperclip from his pocket, a skill he'd practiced more times than Claire cared to admit. The lock clicked open. The attic was a labyrinth of shadows. Dust swirled in the candlelight, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. At the center of the room was a large wooden chest, its surface marked with strange, ancient symbols. As Michael moved closer, Claire grabbed his arm. "Don't," she hissed. But Michael had already started lifting the lid. Inside was a collection of peculiar artifacts, jars filled with murky liquids, bones carved with runes, and a worn leather-bound book. Michael picked up the book and flipped through its pages. The writing was in a language neither of them could read, but the illustrations were horrifying, depictions of rituals, dark rituals, and human sacrifices. A sudden crash from below startled them. Grandfather's voice boomed up the staircase. "What are you doing?" Claire and Michael froze, the book clutched in Michael's hands. Grandfather appeared at the foot of the attic stairs, his face contorted in fury. "You shouldn't have come here," he growled, his voice no longer sounding entirely human. Before they could respond, the symbols on the chest began to glow. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder until it was deafening. The artifacts inside the chest started to levitate, spinning faster and faster. Grandfather's form seemed to shift in the flickering candlelight, his features elongating, his hands curling into claws. "You've unleashed it," he snarled, his voice layered with an otherworldly echo. "You've ruined everything." The siblings bolted for the staircase, but the house seemed to come alive around them. Doors slammed shut, walls groaned, and shadows stretched and twisted unnaturally. They made it to the study, which, to their surprise, was unlocked. Inside, they found another book on the desk, open to a page titled "The Binding Ritual." "This must be how we stop him," Claire said, scanning the page. It described a ritual requiring salt, fire, and a chant written in phonetic spelling. Michael grabbed a nearby jar of salt while Claire lit a small oil lamp. They began the chant, their voices shaking but growing steadier as they continued. Grandfather burst into the room, his form now fully monstrous, his eyes glowing red. He lunged at them, but an invisible barrier seemed to hold him back as the chant reached its climax. With a final cry, they tossed the salt and fire onto the ground, completing the ritual. A blinding light filled the room, and when it faded, grandfather was gone. The mansion fell silent. The oppressive weight lifted, and the siblings looked at each other, breathless and shaken. They packed their things and left the house that night, vowing never to return. Years later, Claire would still wake up from nightmares of glowing red eyes and a voice that rasped, "You've unleashed it." But she and Michael knew one thing for certain: some family secrets are better left buried.